So today we're going to talk about our subjective filters, which is a central concept or series of concepts in this class. And I'd like to start by showing you an excerpt of one of my favorite movies by one of my favorite American directors whose name is Richard Linklater, and it's called Waking Life. Has anybody seen the movie? I'm curious. No? Okay. Maybe this will entice you to see it. Okay.
Lips are your thinnest skin. They need special attention day and night. New chapstick dual-ended hydration lock.
Sorry about that.
24-hour care. SPF protects by day. Natural oils replenish by night. Chapstick. Put your
YouTube.
lips first.
Okay.
Your life is yours to create.
Maybe I don't exist in your mind. Still just as real as anything else.
I seem like I've walked into an alternate universe.
You haven't met yourself yet.
I'm trapped.
I want real human moments. I want to see you.
I'm not in an objective, rational world.
You can have any kind of sex you want. Seems like everyone's sleepwalking through their waking state or walking through their dreams.
So, you produce a neo-human, the individual no longer restricted by time and space.
I'm just trying to get like a sense of where I am.
Just wake up.
Do you remember me? When I say love, the sound comes out of my mouth and it hits the other person's ear, travels through their memories of love or lack of love.
It's like I'm being prepared for something.
On really romantic evenings of South, I go salsa dancing with my confusion.
Everyone knows fun rules.
You can do whatever you want to.
Everything is possible.
You a dreamer?
Yeah.
Don't see too many around lately.
All right.
Wow.
So the reason I show you this movie is that it helps me introduce the key question that's a key question in the ontology and epistemology of organizational behavior, which is the nature of reality and how do you come to know reality. So the movie Waking Life, to come back to it, the central idea of the movie is the central character has an amazing dream. It starts with him having a dream, and then he wakes up and he wants to call his friend and say, "Hey, I had this really strange dream. I want to tell you about it." And then he realizes he's still dreaming. And as the movie progresses, he keeps waking up and he's trapped in a dream. And so it leads him to question, like, is this reality? Is this a dream? Am I in hell? Am I in heaven? Am I dead? What's happening? And that's a kind of a central question that we may ask in philosophy. How can we be sure that we're not dreaming? How do we know that this is reality, right? How can you be sure that there's an objective reality out there happening right now? Are you guys still asleep right there in your bed, or are you in class? Right? Did you really wake up this morning? So how do we know that? It's a question with no clear answer. Nobody can prove, their answer to this question. But there's a few philosophers that have thought about this. So ontology is a philosophical study of the nature of reality. So different models and arguments about how do we come to what is reality? What is your experience, your personal experience? And epistemology is the philosophy of science. So science is one of the approaches that we use to understand reality. And there's different stances about how do you come to know reality? How do you create models of reality? And the interesting thing is science today is one of the strongest models that we adopt to understand reality, and we take it as true. But some of the assumptions that it relies upon are not provable in a scientific term, in a hard work foundational way. So it's interesting to when you study something, when you discover a new science. Organizational behavior is a type of social science I was introducing yesterday. To ask yourself, what's the epistemology and the ontology of that science? Now, it's particularly important to think about it in organizational behavior because, as I mentioned in the first class, it's a social science that studies a different side of reality than most hard sciences tend to study. So, to simplify things, if we wanted to do we could do a whole course on ontology and epistemology, and it would be very interesting. And I love philosophy and I love to geek out on those things, but we don't have the time to do that. So, let's do a very extreme simplification of two stances that can be had. On one end, you have radical subjectivism, and on the other hand, you have scientific realism. So, what's radical subjectivism? There's different proponents of that. One such proponent is a philosopher called Berkeley, who illustrates radical subjectivism with the following example. The example of how do you know that a cherry is real? Right, let's take any object. It could be an apple, it could be a table. But let's take a cherry. How do you know it's real? And his argument goes as follows. Mainly, you get to know the reality of the cherries through your senses. So you can you pick up the cherry and you feel its weight in your hand. Maybe you can smell what the cherry smells like. Then you put it. You see the red color. So you use your eyes to recognize a pattern. The roundness of the cherry, the red color. The green stem. And then you put it in your mouth and you feel with your mouth its roundness, its softness. And when you bite into it, you taste the taste of cherry, right? And all of that tells you that it's real. It's an object that actually exists. I can gain consciousness of it through my senses. But Berkeley then says, well, your senses are a property of yourself. Are they a property? How do you know that the object is exactly out there, is really out there, and not a figment of your imagination? When you dream, you might be dreaming that you're eating a cherry, the same cherry, and you might taste it and see it and experience it, and it doesn't really exist out there. It's in a dream. It's a figment of your imagination. So if you push this line of thinking to the maximum, you might say, I have no way of ascertaining that there's a reality out there. So maybe the only person that's alive in this world is me, and you guys don't exist. This classroom doesn't exist, The world doesn't exist at all. I've been living in a dream since I came into existence, and I've created a reality entirely. And I, there's no way for me to know whether it's out there or it's in there, right? Kind of like extreme, right? But a little trippy, but extreme point of view. Kind of like, the movie Waking Life is built a little bit around this idea. Now, the sort of other extreme, which we're more used to, is scientific objectivism. So it's really based on the scientific method that you know about. That the assumption here is that there is a reality out there that's different from us. And the way we understand it is we experiment. We do experiments. So when we are children, we do natural experiments, right? One of the things that children do, routinely is like, I have a 3.5-year-old son, when he was an infant, they love to do that, They bring stuff and throw it on the floor, and it's annoying. You're like, why are you throwing things on the floor? Well, they're doing experiments. Like, is this going to fall again? Yeah, it's falling. Look at this. It's falling. Gravity, right? So they discover gravity as a rule, and they have to experiment with it many, many times to develop a rule of like what happens when you let something go and it falls down to the floor. They don't have a theory of gravity with the equations and all of that yet. But they have, they're experimenting and building models of reality. So we all do that. From the moment we're born to up until now, we have various experiences in reality. And we develop models in our minds. The scientific model is a little bit more organized than that. So you ask a question, you state a hypothesis, you conduct an experiment that can be replicated. That's a key aspect of it. You analyze the result, you make a conclusion. Right? And if you work collectively with other scientists throughout history, you have certain models and theories that get adopted and refined, and that's your view of external reality, right? That we rely upon. Now, most of us, interestingly, don't understand all of the theories that science is based on. Most of us don't have the exact knowledge of that, but we accept it as like, yeah, that's reality. That's scientific models of reality are real. So, which one is the correct one? Which one do you subscribe to? This one or this one? How do you know which one is the correct way to believe in? The real answer is you can't. You can't prove any of this, but you have certain hunches. So I'll give you my hunch. I believe that the truth is in between this one and this one. I told you there was those two extreme positions were a simplification, and one of the best, philosopher who articulated this first, and the best for me is Immanuel Kant, who explains that there probably is a reality out there that's a guess. You can't prove it, but it's most likely there. But you can never experience, you can never gain cognizance of that reality outside of your experience of it, your subjective experience of it. So it's going back to the idea of Berkeley that we first gain consciousness of external reality through our senses, right, or our five senses, which, in his model, we put together in a form of intuition that then we consciously observe. So we try to interpret what our senses bring up to our consciousness. And we build an image, a coherent image of a phenomenon that we see out there, right? So what you see here is that the way we apprehend reality, the way we understand reality, is a mixture of external reality itself, the thing itself, like a tree, for example, or a situation that you're trying to interpret, and your senses, your intuition, your mind, your reason, right? And as we grow in life, from children to adults, as we progress in life, we keep changing our models, right? We sometimes change a model that's something that we thought was true. We realize, maybe it's not true, or maybe it's more complicated than that. So we refine that model. But the thing is that it's hard to know which part of the model you've created is the reality itself and which part is the product of your own filters. Right, so that's so Kant says essentially we can never be sure. We hope that the models of reality we have are somewhat a faithful representation of what's out there, but we can never be fully sure of it. Like a good analogy is the idea of a map versus a territory. So you have a map. You're going to take a 7-day hike in the wilderness. You have a map of the different trails and mountains and obstacles and rivers, right? And the map is not the reality itself. It's a simplification of it. You couldn't have every possible thing that you will encounter there on the map. You have to make some choices about what is the most important thing to represent. Maybe obstacles to cross, maybe the path that you're going to follow. And you hope that your map is faithful to the reality you will encounter there. But and throughout history now we have GPS and stuff like that. But throughout history, map makers kept refining maps. First navigators that went around the world kept changing the maps based on their experience of it. And that's kind of like again like how we function, how we develop our models of reality, and how science functions.